I mean, it's been such a challenge, right? Because at a state level, we've been Republican for the decades
Which
we've been.
I didn't know until I saw your video
Yeah.
because I didn't go look that up. And then when I saw the wall of red, I was like,
The Wikipedia
whoa,
is crazy.
that is a huge problem for our state.
Yeah.
You know, just having a solid red background.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not I'm not going to curse a party for forever because, right, they were the party of Lincoln. The Republicans of today are completely different than they were 140 years ago, all the way back then, right? The whole Northeast was Republican back then. But we're looking at a totally different, hijacked Republican Party, particularly here in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
For, a libertarian, free state kind of positions where it's going from a society of collectivism and supporting your neighbors to individuals. And hey, if I have mine, that I'm happy.
Yeah.
I don't care about yours. You're on your own. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Which is a really bad spot to be when people actually need stuff.
Yeah.
Because everybody's just trying to transfer wealth. That's all it is.
Yes.
And, poor people be damned.
Yeah. And it's so unrealistic. It's easy to say, I've already said it, the pull yourself up by your bootstraps, walk into the machine shop and say, hey, I got two hands, I could do this job. And there's a generational gap there in particular because, from the late 40s through, let's say, mid 70s, you could succeed in that way. There was that kind of opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Where folks could get by on just a high school education, a single income in the home. That's kind of the thought that's been embedded in the later generations, those older generations, that, hey, that's how I got where I am today. Why can't you do that?
Yeah, even growing up, I grew up in Connecticut, so fairly blue state. But where I lived, it seemed like pretty conservative. And everybody growing up, they'd be like, oh, you just got to work hard. You'll be fine. You buy a house over there. You just go get a trade and then go do your thing. But that's not the case at all.
No.
Like, not today.
Yeah.
Back then, it was the 80s and 90s. Maybe that was still there, but ever so slightly. Like, not like today. Today, it's every man.
Yeah, and there's no realistic ladder. A few people find a trampoline to jump up and they get there, by, fortune. But for the most part, people are either stuck in the place that they were born or actually finding themselves falling down. And, the more that we rip away, particularly in New Hampshire, these opportunities from the state, it's really creating these two different outcomes with no real middle.
Oh, absolutely. There's such a defining, like, even when I just go on Facebook to all the Barrington, groups, there's always a segment that's, oh, I'm being taxed out. I can't afford this.
Yeah.
I can't afford that. And instead of like looking at the system and saying, oh, it's my voting habit that's really screwing me over, it's just, I'd rather tear down somebody else as being a little bit more successful or has a little bit, I don't know what it is, I mean, as you get older, it's harder to develop more income.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're old. Like, not many people are going to give you opportunities for employment and stuff like that. You're from New Hampshire though, right?
I am. I'm New Hampshire born and raised.
That's cool because you have a background of like what it's like to grow up here.
Yeah.
And so you've seen it all. Have you left the state at all?
Yeah, I lived in New York City for about 10 years. So I went to college at Hofstra on Long Island and stayed there after I graduated, and during the pandemic decided to come back home.
Okay, I was going to ask, what brought you home?
Yeah, so me and my wife, we've talked about coming back to New Hampshire for a long time. New York's the most fun place in the world. There's so many experiences to have there. If you want any cultural, food, it's right at your fingertips. Not growing up there, but when I was there talking to my people around me, it's the most diverse area in the world because you have two international airports. It's basically the entry point for, the globe to come to the United States. So tons of people are right there. So tremendous experience. But we always knew, especially if we wanted to plan our life ahead, have a family, I would never want to experience trying to round up children in the city. And then just there's little things that just are so painful. And we have a small little snowstorm today.
Yeah.
It sucked in New York when it snowed. I had a car, and if you needed to drive to work, you dig yourself out, you go off. By the time you got back, that spot's gone. Someone took the spot you dug out. So you just got to wait till you find another spot.
Dig that out.
You basically park it to block it to make sure no one takes it while you're digging it out.
Yeah.
And then you parallel park and repeat the process, the next day.
It's so different going from the city to like coming back to New Hampshire. Like even if you're in the city, like Dover or Portsmouth, it's not the same.
No,
it's substantial. I grew up Norwich, Connecticut, so about an hour-ish from New York. And I got to spend a good amount of time growing up there, between there and Boston. And yeah, it's so different. And then I moved around, so I've gotten to live like outside of Atlanta, Albuquerque, New Mexico, just outside of Seoul, South Korea. Cool. Major cities.
Yeah.
And you're right though. New York City is kind of special.
Yeah. The
diversity, the food, like just everything across the board. But it's a nightmare in the winter.
Yeah. And there's other, I remember going home for Christmas every year while living down there, and then spent 5.5 hours in the car, just tired. It's dark out by like 6 p.m., but you look up and I could see the stars, and I'm like, man, I haven't seen these for 6 months.
Yeah,
because you don't see them down there.
That light pollution is very real.
So there's definitely getting back to your question, the quality of life that me and my wife were looking for when we wanted to come back to New Hampshire. We wanted to own, which, unless you were born into it or, had the money, you weren't going to own in New York or the surrounding area.
Right.
And, during COVID, we did what so many other couples did. We played Zillow and looked around the world and with our friends and be like, oh, we could all move into a mansion together in like Utah. But we looked at New Hampshire again, and our rent for a 1-bedroom concrete box is what our mortgage is today, which is a 3-bedroom house, garage, backyard, fenced in. It just made absolute sense to
oh no, I fully agree. We got so lucky. I was living in the Philippines before this, and
Mr. Worldwide over here.
Yeah, well, I was in the military, so
I figured.
So I had help, but being able to go online. I came back for family before COVID, but we moved back in 2018, and I got so lucky that we did, because I would never have been able to purchase here had we waited. House prices. My house is worth twice as much than when I bought it, which is absurd. And I don't want that. Specifically, housing prices are ridiculous, and they need to come back down, because, some people will be like, wow, it's worth that much, you should sell it. It's like, okay, but then where do I go? I don't want to necessarily leave. I want to improve this place. And I know, don't mass up New Hampshire, but we kind of need to mass this place up.
Yeah.
To a degree.
I want to, jump on that same experience, of the house value. I mean, we tried to move in the middle of COVID. So 2021, right, I learned I was going to get a job transfer. I was able to transfer to keep my job from from New York to up here.
Yeah.
And so we started looking at houses late December and January. And our process was, at the time, not knowing what the housing market was at all, because we lived 300 miles away. We would drive up. Well, we'd spend the week looking at Zillow.
Yep. And
at the time, mostly postings were coming up Wednesday and Thursday. And there'd be like 3 or 4 in our price range. We'd look around. We'd be like, all right, that looks nice. That looks nice. They'd schedule their open houses for Saturday. So we'd drive up Friday after work, stay at her parents'. They live in Kennebunkport.
Okay. Nice place.
Very nice place. We drive into wherever town, whether it was Dover, Rochester, Farmington, where we ended up. We'd look at the house, tour it, but the line before you even got to the house was like 40, 50 people deep.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, got that time to view the house in a crowd of people. Everything was as is, you know, they're not making any contingencies. You got to pay for it, you know, and that's it. And they said all offers are due Sunday morning, and you'll know by Sunday night if you won the bid. Like, it was that turnaround. So we were making that 5.5 hour drive to do a day sprint with hundreds of other people to look at houses and then submit the offer. And we had to like basically make that decision right away. And that decision wasn't, all right, this is in our price range, because we also had to think about, we need to win the bid.
Yep.
And ultimately you had to go tens of $1,000s over the bid, because that's how wild the market was at the time. And, you know, we'd learned like, oh, you lost to an all cash offer from someone from Texas who didn't even come to look at it. Like, we learned like some crazy things. Or they said no inspections. Like, do you want this for no inspections? I said, no, I'm not taking that risk. Like,
right. It's a big risk.
And it was,
I think most people feel that right now. Maybe, I don't know about right now. So I always look when I'm driving around like, oh, wow, that house went up for sale.
mm-hmm.
And then I'll drive by maybe a couple days later and there'll be a pending on it or something like that. But lately, it hasn't been as hot. Now, obviously, a lot's changed in the last year, right? Big unemployment, just so many things in our economy is not doing as well. So some of the houses are staying on the market for weeks, if not maybe a couple months. But some of them are moving, depending if you know what you have. Some people want that. When we moved here, and this was in 2018, very similar to what you're saying. I thought I was going to be renting an apartment in Dover. That was originally the plan.
Yep.
And when we got here, I got a realtor and she was showing us around. Maybe we saw about 6 houses between the area. And then we got to this one and we saw it, and it was the biggest house that she had shown us. I mean, it's not huge, but like it's decent size.
Yeah, great house.
And we looked at it, and my wife and I were like, "Yeah, this is decent." And then the realtor was like, "Great, you have 45 minutes to make a decision." I was like, "What?"
And you're on the clock.
It was almost $200,000 over what I was looking for.
Yeah,
and but we ended up saying yes, because what else were we gonna do?
Yeah.
There was no other options. Housing in New Hampshire is really crazy, and I get it. I mean, it's rural, it's beautiful. The taxes, I don't know how much the taxes are an incentive right now. I mean, maybe compared to other states, but because property taxes are so high in New Hampshire,
it's getting, and it's strangling families right now with how much they're going up. Not just because of the supply of housing, which is its own problem, right? We're not allowing for building of new properties, whether it's single family apartments. It's getting so difficult. And even when they do get built, they're scomped up by real estate companies out of Massachusetts and New York, and just rented back to people for higher than what they would have paid if they were able to buy it first themselves.
Do you think we ever get out of that? Do you think New Hampshire does the right thing and like bans commercial ownership from single family houses at least?
I would hope. I wouldn't be so aggressive as to say a ban, but an idea that I had was a non-residence ownership tax. So if a non-resident of New Hampshire owns a property that could, a single family home or even a multifamily home, there's an additional cost to it. So, they have to weigh, is it worth us owning it, to make money off of it, or should we just give up the property and allow families to buy it again? And at least if they are going to be renting it, at least the state accumulates some value from that and can hopefully provide to the people who don't own the homes, or just provide a better services for the state itself.
I have doubts on the services. This place does not like services.
Well, that's why we got to change, change the leadership.
What do you think our chances are of changing that leadership this year? We got primary coming in September and then general election in November. Like, just from your point of view, what do you think?
So you talked about like looking at your town forums, right? That's where you get the pulse of what is everyone's temperature right now.
Yeah.
And in my town in particular, Farmington, the two hot topics is education and property taxes. And I'm making it my effort. You and I, we started talking about the immense need for Democrats in particular to get the message out.
Yeah.
Because I'll say since 2016, we've been terrible messengers. The party has, as far as why to vote for them. They just have not been able to connect with voters. That's why they lost in 2016, and then again, this last election. I kind of went on a tangent there, but
no, that's fine.
But so what are our chances? I think it's our job now to point out the challenges, right? Most people aren't as informed and educated on their day-to-day like we are. And that's part of the reason why Trump has been so successful, because he's been able to communicate to the everyday person that I see that you're challenged by the world around you, right? It's harder for you to get or keep a job. It's harder for you to afford your home. The streets are worse than they were before. The news is pumping how scary the world is out there, despite the fact that all safety records mostly show that we're a safer country these days. But
right,
the news kind of dictates that. But if you're the everyday person talking around the water cooler at the manufacturing plant, or talking with your family at the dinner table and being like, how do we continue to survive? Trump and the Republicans did a very good job of connecting there and saying, hey, we see that you guys are challenged. We see that every day is getting harder and harder for you folks. Now, where they're wrong is they decided to blame Democrats and blame immigrants and blame everyone else, not the the corporate oligarchy that runs our country and the policies that have been put in place, particularly here in New Hampshire now. It's kind of, so it's our job, I think, as communicators and being more informed to broadcast out in any capacity. This is, we see this reality. We as normal people as well are living the same reality. We know our property taxes are going up. We know our healthcare costs are going up.
Yeah.
And it's foolish, almost impossible to explain how you could blame a single Democrat for this, when again, New Hampshire has been run by Republicans for the last decade. And then, like we were talking about earlier, if you go back 100 years, there's, a handful of instances where even a Democrat was in charge of anything.
And I would argue that those Democrats that, like Hassan and Shaheen, that were governor and senator, obviously, I don't even know how much of a Democrat they really are. I mean, because, the Democrats have like a big tent, where you have somebody like Chuck Schumer on one side and then AOC on the other, or Bernie, or whoever you want to put there. I feel like the Republicans nationally, since you brought up Trump, took advantage of people. He didn't, I don't know if he connected with them. I mean, he did, but he lied to them. Like, he hasn't kept one single promise other than, trying to deport everybody. But outside of that, I mean, he just told you, I'm going to make you money. I'm going to make sure you have this and that. And then none of that was true. It was just talk to get into office.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I mean, what would stop a Democrat from doing the same thing on this run? I'm going to make everything great. I'm going to fix you. I'm going to make you whole.
Yeah.
And then to get in office and not do anything. I'm very scared about who's going to run for governor. Can I just ask you, from that point of view, I know it's outside of New Hampshire, do you have an idea of who you think might be our presidential candidate?
Democrats?
From the Democrats.
No, I don't. It could be, I could see Shapiro making a run. I could see Kamala trying again, but because she's kind of on the outside trying to start some conversation. I think she just launched something like literally like yesterday or 2 days ago.
Yeah, I
new
don't think she's
communication.
gonna run again.
No, she might just be trying to create a new platform. I don't know what her plan is. It's kind of
I know we're like really, really early, but
yeah.
I think by the end of the year, especially after the general election, people will start talking about it.
Yes.
I actually think Mark Kelly will be our next president.
Mark Kelly.
I don't know that he's like, I don't know everything about him,
Mm-hmm.
but he seems like the most like he's got the less baggage of anybody. If anything, he's probably got no baggage, you know. And I'm not sure if I'm behind him because I don't know where his policies would be, so we have a lot to wait for. Everybody thinks that I'm like going for Gavin Newsom.
That's the obvious name that I forgot to drop.
Well, everybody thinks that because, you know, he's memeing, he's going back and forth with Trump, but I don't think he's going to be the next president. He may run for it. I don't think that a California governor right now could win. And I think people want something or will want something completely refreshing.
Yeah.
And I think Mark Kelly may have gotten the bump from what Hegseth and Trump did.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I was just curious from your point of view if you see something maybe I don't.
I've actually, it's interesting, or I used to be more, especially when I was in New York, more invested and in depth with the national politics, and since coming back here I've been more invested in the state and local. So I haven't been looking at it as much, but it's like you said, once these midterms pass by, that's when the heat will really start.
I think so too. And I agree with you, everything starts local. Whether it's your city council or school board or whatever it is. And I'm really focused on New Hampshire as well. The issue though with New Hampshire, at least right now, is because our primary is in September and it's so far away, most people haven't announced. They're still exploring whether, governorship, executive council, all that. It'll still be probably 3-ish months before.
Well, June's the date they have to.
That's the file date. And there'll be people that are like loosely preparing in like April and May just to see if it's worth it. But yeah, until June, we won't actually know. And I know so far, obviously, Kelly Ayotte's going to run again. She only won by like 4.5%, which was a very small win. I think that she loses this year against pretty much anybody because the Republicans on the national level have brought the conversation. They changed everything. So I think that she's got a very large uphill battle. I know we have John Kuiper, which he has been getting out there and being seen, and he was a late runner last time in 24. I don't know who else is coming there. Some people are talking about some of the bigger cities in New Hampshire, maybe those mayors stepping up, and I don't know. We'll have to wait. But locally is right now where everybody's trying to get, who's going to be their state rep. Who, for us, same county, so our senator is pretty much a give me, right? David Waters, he's a great guy. He wasn't sure if he was going to run again. He is running again. And I think that's a pretty safe seat. I'm interested in what our state house does because it's such a lopsided like thing right now. What do you think matters the most in New Hampshire to people? Like, what are they going to go? You think it is education and housing, or is that just your town?
I think for just based on the folks, I think affordability, I think, is the overall conversation. I've been saying it's a crisis of affordability because it's kind of a catch-all, right? It's housing, it's education as well. It's
all your dinner topics.
Yeah, it's everything around the table. Healthcare, especially in the past year with the the cuts to the national support. That's what we're feeling so much right now, right? That's why all these insurance rates are going up, or people are being dropped from their coverages. The insurance companies that support our educators almost across the entire state had to raise the rates unexpectedly this year because of these federal cuts. And school districts across the board, including Farmington's, are getting hit with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of expenses that they did not prepare for And now moving forward, we have to account for that and raise everyone's property taxes. Meanwhile, at the state level, they're cutting the they're talking about cutting the business enterprise tax. So there's $26 million they're looking to give up and basically hand out to huge businesses, $1 million businesses, $1 billion businesses, and while the average business will get about $500 a year.
That's nothing.
Like, that's nothing. Or they want to expand open enrollment, which I'm adamantly opposed to, the effects that's going to have, particularly in small towns. That's tens of thousands of dollars that small towns are going to lose in particular. We've seen the voucher program expand as well, which is another $50 million out of our education going straight to private education, which really only benefits 1% of our population.
Oh, I firmly believe that the free staters that are in our legislation are literally trying to bankrupt our state. They're on target probably 1 or 2 more years, and all the extra money that we had in our like general fund will be gone.
Yeah.
And then we'll just be digging in a hole. So I don't know if they're preparing for, new leadership to try to bring it back, and they're just going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
It seems counterintuitive to running a state. It just seems so dangerous for our families, our children. Everybody's complaining about us not having enough kids, but nobody wants to have kids in this environment. So
yes, I mean, the story with me and my wife are the exact same. We have this conversation all the time. We have no kids, and we talk about, do we want to start a family or not? And there's a lot of different aspects you think about, but affordability is one of the biggest conversation pieces about it. And the quality of our schools, and and even the long-term opportunities for that kid moving forward. Right. We both work very hard and have successful careers. It's hard. I don't know the finances of my whole family and her family, but most of the time you think about, you want the next generation to climb above the previous. I don't think we're seeing that right now. And I think I saw, and I didn't read into it, so I wish I was a little bit more prepared on it, but this Gen Z
Mhm.
is the first generation to actually have a decline in net worth at the age group that they're in compared to the generation before.
That actually doesn't surprise me at all. I have 5 kids. I have 0 grandkids. Now, my kids range from 28 to 18. No kids in like planning stage or anything like that. My kids can't even basically go and get their own place, like we talked about at the beginning, where housing is unattainable.
Yep.
Getting good jobs, especially here in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't understand why we cut some of the most important things, right? Take, for example, UNH. Every single budget has reduced money towards UNH. It is our crown jewel as a state.
Yeah.
It's our state university. And last year they cut $30 million. They had to basically reduce campus. They reduced staff.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't help us as a state. And it doesn't give our kids like that warm feeling like, oh, UNH is the place where I need to be, because tuition's so much higher now. It just makes sense to leave the state and not come back. So seeing people come back to the state is nice from my point of view.
Yeah.
But I don't know how long the younger people stay.
Yeah. I started on one of the Facebook conversations, again, my town, a lot of discussion that gets pretty heated about public education and the debate between higher taxes and providing to the next generation. And I started typing and then I deleted because I didn't want to. There's some buttons I want to go forward and some I don't. But the whole thing I was typing about was the kids are not stupid and they're not ignorant. These are open communications, open forums, and they see that half the town, half the adults around them are saying, we don't care about you. What reason are you giving them to stay? Right? You're literally saying, to yourself, like, I care about me more than you, and like you're not giving them any reason to stick around and you know continue their education at like UNH, like you said, or start a business in town because their neighbors already told them, yeah, tough luck, pull yourself up from your bootstraps.
Which is really rough to read.
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. A year ago, maybe a little bit more, I can't remember what the protest was, but there was a protest at the intersection in this town, and I went to the Facebook group, and one guy in town, he's infamous, I won't name drop him, but he basically was encouraging somebody to run over all the protesters.
Jeez, yeah.
And I actually wrote in there, I said, what the fuck's wrong with you, man? Like, this is disgusting. You are a bad person in our community.
Yeah.
If you wish death on the people that live next door or down the road in your own community, you should really evaluate like everything that you're doing. And it's kind of a shame because there's so many people out there, like more than, I'm not saying like half or anything, but like there's too many of them.
Yeah.
And we need at the end of the day, we need better community. And these guys, they're not doing it. And the worst part is the guy was old enough to be somebody's grandfather. If it was my grandfather, I would disown him. We would never speak again. I'd be like, your behavior is beyond repulsive and we cannot have that conversation.
Yeah.
I want to switch topics just a little bit here because you're an interesting person. When I met you, we were just setting up the executive council. You had come in last minute. You threw your name in the hat. Mm-hmm. And I was surprised, not in a bad way, but it's nice to see people wanting to be part of a council to like make positive change. I straight up wanted you to take my seat. Inside my head, I was hoping, okay, just don't vote for me, vote for this guy. Because I already knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this. Mm-hmm. I'd already ran for office in 24. I didn't want to run again. And I wanted to bring the conversation to the people because you're not getting the news on TV. And after going to all the doors that I went to and I figured out so many people are not listening, I need to find a way to get in their living room. And this is how you do it. Yeah. This, like, nobody's watching MS Now or whatever it is, NBC, because they're all owned by billionaires. But I noticed that you were doing the same thing. You're out there making videos. You're out there having the conversation. Out of everybody else, you're the only one doing it other than me that I'm aware of, right? I'm sure other people are doing it. But let me ask you about that a little bit. Like, what's driving you to put your face out there to talk about these big issues?
So I've talked. So for me, it's the messaging that has been truly lacking from our perspective of our side of the aisle. That I truly think that's why we lost in 2016 the presidential, why we lost 2024, and why we continued to lose in smaller doses around the country and locally. It's the Democrats, unfortunately, have a tough time coalescing. There's, while the other side, the Republicans, you could vary a little bit in your positions, but they'll still, at the end of the day, support each other.
So you're saying that the Republicans in your eye is more unified than the Democrats?
More unified and even more forgiving internally. If I think back to Kamala Harris, whether you agree or disagree with the position of Biden's administration towards the Israeli-Palestinian crisis, for example, there were people who were so opposed to it that they said they were not going to vote. If you were to look at the Republican side and someone was to have a alternative position, it could be something. I'm trying to think of a position that they might not. Abortion, for example.
Okay.
I don't. Maybe that's a little too left, right. But let's say that there was a Republican candidate that was like, hey, I think women should have the right to choose. I have a feeling they would lose fewer voters than the Democrats on the other side. At least there'd be less noise about it, because I feel like they're more likely to say, hey, we got to get our guy in because we agree with everything else. While on the left, I have found that if you have one issue disagreement, it almost, you become, the bastard in their eyes, and they, create online, um, pitchfork events, and like, well, I'm never going to vote for them. I'm staying home in November. I mean, we saw it also in 2016 with, when, the Democrat machine, whether it was, questionable or not, it's a different conversation I had, but they chose Hillary over Bernie Sanders at the end of the day. And there were legitimate Bernie Sanders supporters that said, I'm voting for Trump because I don't like Hillary Clinton. I don't think you would ever see that on the other side.
That's a good point. I guess you could consider myself, I was a Bernie bro.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like, actually, I think it was confirmed that Hillary did some fuckery in the background and basically took that. It's interesting because you hear, vote blue no matter who. And then the Republicans will just tear that apart and be like, wow, look at you guys. But at the same time, they do the same thing.
Yeah.
How many Republicans I ever heard say, I would never vote for a Democrat.
Yeah.
Like, I've been called a socialist on somebody's porch before, like it's kind of crazy how like, well, coalescing is a good word, but like they're committed.
Yeah.
And I think that obviously helps them.
Yeah. So because I think there's that challenge, and it's not that it's bad for business, right? They're not gonna we're gonna be more likely to lose since we have that. It's good in a sense that people are allowed to have their own opinions and want to have varying candidates versus what the establishment throws at them. Unfortunately, we are in a two-party system where you can't really allow for that. Yeah. So you do shoot yourself in the foot by having these different opinions, unfortunately. But as far as the local level goes, and what you and I are doing, I think being able to develop a message that is broad-based, that points out the facts of, especially in New Hampshire, what the Republicans have been doing for the past decades. I think we have an opportunity to actually talk to neighbors, not as left or right, but just look at purely the policy. Look at how they're stripping away and how it's not in your best interest that what they're doing. I mean, some of the videos that I'm highlighting is like, hey, remember when they promised to make cuts? They did. They followed through on their promise. They are making cuts.
Everybody got cuts.
But their cuts are not your taxes. They're cutting programs that offset your taxes, so they give that money back to their friends and the big businesses around them.
It's always a grift. It literally is a grift. But that's why I'm hoping that people will tune in to channels like this, to podcasts like this, because it's not that 30 seconds at the door. You get time to dissect. Like, if somebody wanted to know how I or whoever's sitting across from me feels, a 2-hour podcast will get you there.
Yeah.
Generally, if you're actually talking.
Yeah.
But that's something we don't have enough. I realized that we had a big issue a couple of years ago, obviously. And so I've been preparing all of this, in the meantime. There's just no avenue for many people to get the information in New Hampshire. We have a few online newspapers. We have corpo owned, local newscasts, Sinclair and all that. They're not helping us at all. And in fact, they're keeping us dumb. Our neighbors are not informed because they're watching our version of Fox News, which hurts us. So I think that this is the path. And that's why I ran for the council spots.
Yeah.
I was hoping that I could transform and help like the county and the town have pipelines of information to connect. I don't know if that's going to happen.
I think we're in sync there. So it's funny you said, I didn't know anybody when I went into that meeting.
Right.
I
think everybody was like, who's this?
Yeah. I mean, I learned about the event taking place. I'm like, saw the results obviously in November, and the direction our state was going. And I got to get involved. I wasn't a registered Democrat either. I've always been in New Hampshire, registered undeclared.
Same.
Because I wanted the flexibility to vote either side. I think that is a right that is super powerful, especially for us, it encourages people to be more informed, to make more of a decision in their, power of their vote. But I've always essentially been Democrat. But, in policy, I've been more or less a Democrat. But I've always been in undeclared. I've probably voted in as many Republican primaries as Democrat.
Really?
If we were to go all the way back to when I was 18, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I wasn't going to vote for Obama. He was the incumbent, so I voted in the Republican, right?
Yep.
I did vote in the last one Democrat too, but so I just registered as Democrat. I think it was like that day Phillips confirmed it, so I was allowed to actually participate because the town took like 2 weeks to do through my paperwork and make sure that I was registered. But I mean, I think, we talk about information. It's hard for folks, and I think about my town in particular. It's people just have too many concerns in their day to be as informed as you and I.
Right.
Got to make sure the kids get to school and they have their lunches packed. I got to go to work. I got to, if I'm buying lunch, I got to keep it under $12. Like I got to get home, make sure the car runs. Do we have enough fuel in the tank to keep the house warm? They don't have time to do as much in-depth research, and we have the opportunity to shrink it down, especially at the local level. Like you said, local politics gets pushed aside because it's much more interesting to talk about, the highest seat in the land and Congress, because it affects everyone. It's where the money is. It's right. They're not selling, advertising space in local newspapers.
Right.
It's not making that much money.
Right.
And when you are as busy as people are these days and have all these other real concerns, they don't have time to sit down and do research. They're going to put in what's easiest and what people are mostly talking about. And that's and then they're going to cascade that down. So doesn't matter which side you're on, if you're watching, information from the left, you're going to probably vote down the line for the most part, because you don't have time to research after, election A and B.
Right.
All these down ballot things, I'll just trust. And it's the same on the other side. So I think it's a very valuable opportunity for us to be able to create these easy access information that will better inform the people, because I want to be able to allow locally for people to have independent votes per bracket, right?
Sure.
If I'm pushing my message out locally and I'm thinking about it, I am going to message towards conservative Republicans and those in the middle. And, and I'll tell them honestly, I'll say, I want you to vote blue all the way down. I understand, but I understand that there are fundamental differences, particularly at the national level. I think there's a difference in people's ideologies, whether they vote for who they vote for president versus local. But if they were to know locally that the conservatives local are much different than the conservatives at the national level, particularly in New Hampshire. And I want to point that out as much as we can and say, they do not have your best interest. They are actively working against you.
Some of the misinformation that I encountered personally, like knocking on somebody's door and having that conversation, was, oh, you're a Democrat. You're going to raise my taxes.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to give me an income tax. You're going to give me a sales tax. You're going to do this, that, this. And the answer I always told them, like, I'm not going to do any of that stuff, first of all. They're like, well, you're going to take my guns. No, I don't want to take your guns.
Yeah.
I don't want to do an income tax. I don't want to do a sales tax. I think a state this size can be a little bit more creative in finding revenue than just doing property taxes. But problem is you can't have that conversation in a minute or two.
Yeah.
You know, and so the only way that you are going to reach those people is by getting inside their living room. You know, every TV in my house has a little Google TV.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm using the On.
The
Walmart
smart.
On is
Yep.
the way to go. But I'm hoping that somebody in New Hampshire will come home from a day's worth of work, do their stuff, sit down on the couch, maybe pop on a podcast, and maybe it'll be this one.
Yep.
You know, where are you finding success for your messaging?
I mean, I'm trying to really focus again on the big issue that's, you know, basically I'm using the Facebook forum, the local community forum, as the cheat sheet and say, all right, my content is going to be surrounded in this space. And basically my goal is to point out what their side is doing, you know, what are the impacts of it and how we should resolve it. You know, it's I'm in sales. That's my job.
Sure.
So
you know how to talk to people.
Yeah. So the whole idea is you create, we call it within my company, insights. You know, it's talking about, you know, what it is, why it's important, and why you need to like change it. So, you know, pointing out like, hey, your current representatives are actively voting to take away money to the schools, which is the big topic of conversation, to increase your property taxes as a result of taking that state money away. And so now it's a double whammy for us locally, right? Our schools are hurting more and you're paying more for it.
And you're not getting any new services.
You're not getting anything. And yeah, you're not getting anything else. So to combat that, we got to think differently. And, you know, there is a little bit of a leap of faith, like you said, because, you know, all they've ever been told is, oh, the other side is the one that makes things so expensive. It's their fault it's so expensive. Hey, and maybe they have a point at a national level because Democrats have been in control before. And that's what they're going to point out always, right? They're going to be like, oh, when we had, you know, Biden as president, things got expensive. Like, but we're talking about local, right? Like we have to narrow the focus as much as you can. Again, because you only have, we call it the elevator pitch. You only have a minute with their attention. And if you're able to pique that attention, then they'll look under the curtain more and say, hey, maybe this guy's right.
I understand that there are just a segment of people that are unreachable.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, it doesn't matter. Like, it could be as bad as it gets and they're not leaving. And so I understand that those people exist. I just try to reach the people that are in the middle, the people that are looking for a little bit more information, right? But you know what's also interesting to me, and this shifts away from politics ever so slightly, the alpha male generation, right? I'm not really talking about like Andrew Tate and like those kind of people. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about like the toughness. You know, we always hear pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah. And every time, like, I would tell somebody, like, oh, I'm running for the Democrats or whatever, I was seen as weak. I was seen as not as just not as strong in so many different areas. And I never understood that. I'm like, what of being a Democrat makes me weak in any area? You know, whether I like shooting guns or, you know, I don't want an income tax either. I just want us to tax the wealthy.
Yeah, there definitely is that unfortunate perspective. And I think that's how we've seen these young, you know, podcast bros. I think if we want to give them anything, that they created an image that being a Democrat is it's uncool. Yeah, it's like weak. I know there's another slang term that they would use that we don't use anymore, right? As to say, you know, it's not, you know, it's like, why would you be a Democrat? And I think that actually comes in, I was like, it's funny you said that because I was thinking about how it kind of comes in waves being cool to be a Democrat, right? It was cool when Obama was coming up because he was, you know, young guy, thought about change, and I think young people came together. It's like, oh man, this guy's cool. And then there was JFK, and I think he became the cool candidate. So there is a little bit something to that. I don't know where I'm getting at this point. But,
no. That's okay.
But I mean, that's kind of the reality of it. Is it's seen by young males in particular that it's not cool to be a Democrat, but at the same time, and why I think these podcasts are doing so well is because there has been a conversation and almost a rejection of their way of being, right? For a long time, they felt like they were being policed, right? This cancel culture.
You can't say that. You cancel this? No, I cancel you.
So I think that they felt that there wasn't a space for, young conservative males, Christian males. I think, and I think there has been a little bit of too much of a push to the point that that's why they broke and why they're breaking this way and why they kind of said like they lost any space, on college campuses. I think there was some what's a good word of putting it, but they lost their voice in a sense, and their opinions felt unheard. And it, again, I'm not saying that for the most part white males have had an advantage their entire existence here in the US. There was definitely a strong push that really they felt, especially as a younger generation, that they've lost that opportunity to even exist. No, I'm not saying they're right in any way, but that's the way that they viewed it.
I think we saw different movements, shifts. I can remember when Joe Rogan was still a good podcast, where it wasn't about platforming right-wing voices and stuff like that. I hope that we can get back to having real conversations and not just like punching down and like taking rights from people. I think having good policy, whether it's domestic, foreign, state, national, is important.
Yeah.
And I don't think that should make you an incel, because you feel a certain way, or, you listen to Andrew Schultz podcast and you're like, oh, wow, these guys have it right.
Yeah.
I think it's really more of like a team spirit, here in New England, go Patriots, go Pats and all that. And I feel like that got bled into the politics, and those young men,
yes, absolutely,
right? Specifically young men, were looking for an older, range of dudes that said, hey, it's okay if you hate these people. It's okay if you don't feel this way. Abortion, you had brought it up earlier, was a big indicator for the 2024 election for the Democrats here locally. That was the message. Human rights, women rights, abortion. But the other side didn't want to hear it because they were told, you can't bend on this issue. You can't so they just block you out. So you go knock on the door trying to have a conversation and be like, where do you stand on abortion? And I unabashedly said, I support women's rights. Like, put a doctor in there, not a politician.
Yeah.
That got me so much blowback from the other side. They called me probably just short of like a baby killer.
Yeah.
And all that. But those dudes are not stronger than me. They're not better than me. They just have this one take that's wrong. Like, they thought that they were going to get me on the Facebook group, the pages talking about my position. And I just agreed with them. Like, yeah, most of that is my position. And I called them right out to their face. But when I went knocking on people's doors, that was not a subject that I really talked about. I wanted to talk about taxes.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about education. I wanted to talk about things that affect me and you.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I have daughters and I need them to have women's health care. I need them to have the right to choose, how they operate as a human being. I think that as a society, we need to talk about more dinner topics, So the first thing somebody would say is, you're going to raise my taxes. Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't want to raise taxes. I live in the same community as you. I don't make
Yep.
a ton of money. I'm just like you. And they didn't want to hear it because they just saw me. They said, you're a Democrat. You must be just like all the others.
Yeah.
And that couldn't be further than the truth. And instead, they sent somebody to Concord that raised their taxes,
Yeah.
that voted against everything that they stand for. That's Len Turcott. I will put a name to that. He has done nothing for this community.
Yep.
Right. And I'm not saying just this term, any term. Now, if you're a Republican watching this and you're like, no, he's kept my prices low. No, he hasn't. He's voted against everything that you will need in your life, whether that's now or when you're old and you need to go into the rest home, right? The elderly care. That's all been voted against because, he doesn't want to spend a single dollar. I think those people are very harmful to our state. I think that is what makes us, I really hate this quote, but like the Alabama of the North.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody should have to endure that label. The whole don't mass up New Hampshire stuff, all of that is so wrong in so many ways. Massachusetts is out there killing it.
Mm-hmm.
You may not like their taxes, but if you live here, you shouldn't care. I mean, unless you work there, obviously, but that's on you. If you can't work here, there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
People have made it very difficult to earn a real living in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And if you don't live in the seacoast, you really don't make money because you can't go to Boston. That commute is way too far. And they never put in the train to give you an easy commute, from where there's no money to where there's money.
Yeah.
I think that it's a really unfortunate island, whether it's cannabis legalization, whether it's, how much houses cost or how much minimum wage is.
Or even the most recently, all of New England got together about cooperating on vaccines and medical issues, and New Hampshire's the one state that was not invited. Or if it was invited, we turned it down.
We turned it down.
Yeah.
And what a huge miss that is, And it's funny because this morning I had read that Maine just got their first measles case.
They did. Yep.
And people should really be scared about not getting vaccines for their kids, not getting the health care that, these small human beings that we bring into the world, they don't get to choose. They have somebody else choosing for them until they're 18 and make their own choices. But the issue is there's so many people that are against, and I say so many people like it's a majority, but I mean, there's a large enough group of people not getting vaccines that are going to affect us as a whole and bring back iron lungs and all that other stuff. I almost want to move, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm going to see in the comments, well, why don't you get the hell out of New Hampshire? How about I don't? Instead, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to make this state blue.
Yeah.
I'm going to do everything in my power to get people to see that while I don't support every Democrat, I support progressive policy. I support healthcare for all. I support everybody having a roof over their head, having food in their belly, getting a proper education. Nobody should be suffering. I believe I still live in the world's richest country.
Yeah.
Yet we give nothing to anybody, and it's insanity.
Yeah. You said a lot of things.
No,
I wanted to jump. I want to jump in on.
Go for it. Take it anywhere you want.
So one of the first things you started talking about, the issue like going door to door and focusing on issues that you can connect with people. I think that was, talking about the Democrats' message in 2024. You said, what were some of the big things that they talked about? And it was, important issues. I'm not discarding them in any way.
Sure.
But it was like the message was, our bodies are on the ballot. That was kind of like the big phrase that was used, and that was used nationally. That wasn't just here in New Hampshire. And I had a good conversation with my sister about this once. And she talked about how important the abortion issue, and I agreed with her. Women's rights to choose is the absolute position you should have.
Yeah.
But we already know which, no matter who you are, you pull someone from the street and say, and if abortion is their number one issue, that decision's made for them. It doesn't matter if you've talked about it, right? They're going to vote blue if they're for it, or they're going to vote red if they're against it.
Yeah.
So I used to play this game growing up on PC called The Political Machine.
I think I've heard of this. I've never played it.
It's like it's a very silly little game, but it goes, you run through the election cycle, primary and the general, and you talk about your positions and everything. But the thing that I wanted to point out is each turn, which represents a week in the election cycle, you have what's called political capital that you got to spend. You have to decide, all right, what is the issue I'm going to talk about? Am I going to fundraise, or I'm going to hold a town hall? Whatever you're going to do. I kind of think we need to think about that and apply that kind of thinking, that how much energy can I spend that's going to get my most bang for my buck, that's going to reach the most people. And that was, I think, part of the issue in 16 and 24, where there are black and white issues that you're not gonna push the envelope and gain voters from. Like, you're either for LGBT issues or you're not. You're not going to convince anyone on either end to go to the other side. So it's important to talk about and important to have policy for. If your sole goal is to win the election, don't put too much political capital into it. Talk about the issues that you can peel voters off of, that you can connect in the middle and to the other side. I think that's what gets lost in the strategy a lot.
Well, and to your point, people aren't going to move because abortion is legal or illegal. Well, maybe if it's illegal, right?
Yeah.
But if you tax them out of their house, they're going to move.
Yeah.
Right. So it's picking the topics that are going to have the largest effect for the people you're trying to get to vote for you.
Yes. If the game is winning the election, that needs to be part of your calculus, and I think that gets missed every time, because they're in both 16 and 24. The Democrats were right on their positions. Mm-hmm. I'm not disagreeing with that in any way, but they were not right if your goal was to win the election.
I think that's a good point.
And then the other thing I wanted that while you were talking that I really want to talk about is the importance of our state representatives, in particular in Concord, and thinking about it at a grander scale. So, I think about Farmington, the town I live in. We are a bedroom community. We don't have any major economic, engine that runs the town. We have some great restaurants and eateries. We have a couple convenience stores, a gas station, and some services, whether it's plumbing or HVAC. Like, we have a couple things, but we don't have an economic engine. Long gone is the rubber manufacturing plant and the shoe manufacturing plants. So our economic value is our labor that isn't staying internal. It's going to the towns nearby, which is fine. That's the kind of the cultural, the economic contract that we sign by existing. Right. Is, well, we're not in a barter system. We sell our labor, we get some money back, right? And the big thing about it, and probably another conversation that should be had, but it's boss makes $1, I make a dime. Your labor is actually worth more than you take back in, because the owners of capital need to make money, and that's fair. That's, again, the social economic contract we sign.
Sure.
The problem in small communities in particular is that community might have gotten that money, right? They earned it in another town. They're not bringing it back to Farmington because, again, we don't have that economic engine.
Yeah, there's nowhere to spend it.
We're buying our groceries in Rochester. If we're having a date night, maybe we'll have it in town, but more likely we're going to go to Dover or Portsmouth. So the money never actually makes it back to Farmington. It's stuck, elsewhere. Like, if we were to think more broadly, if we were a country with our own economic, capabilities, we would devalue our currency and maybe, try to get investors to come in or put up tariffs. We would try to find a balance. We have basically a trade balance as a town, a negative trade balance, because our labor, which is our biggest resource, is going out, and the money that it collects does not come back. And so in return, we never have the opportunity to put it towards our schools or our roads or, you know, all the different services that we can have in town.
Right. And that is a huge problem across the state.
Yes.
Perfect example. We'll use a school as an example. If you live in Newington, you are one of 800 people that are a resident, thereabouts. Their commercial space is enormous.
Yes.
So they don't have to pay as much as everybody else in the state for their education. This is the biggest reason why the state needs to carry their part of education. Here in Barrington, we 5 years ago, somewhere around there, they wanted to put in the Burger King. So many people were against it.
Yeah.
Like the older people in the community, they didn't want it. They didn't want the eyesore. We don't need a Burger King, blah, blah, blah. It's always something. But what they didn't think about was, even though it's a small Burger King, they're going to pay taxes into the local area. If we had more commercial presence, you know, maybe we wouldn't have to spend 73% of our property taxes on our school budget. And this is where that downshifting is killing a lot of communities in New Hampshire, because Farmington, probably Milton, anything north of Concord, they probably don't have the commercial enterprise that some cities have, like, you know, Exeter or Dover or some of the Newington. And you're spending more of your money living in a place that doesn't have commercial stuff. And I live in one of those towns too. I have one light, one intersection that you can go through in this town. You'll see a handful of businesses. They're not bringing in a ton. This whole community is paying so much more because they're voting Republican. Because they're not voting to put more commercial space. I guess you could argue, well, we have a lot more residents, you know, 800 in Newington, 10,000 here, but we still need that money. And the state should be spreading that across.
The state is the great equalizer, right? It's that opportunity. You know, I'm not asking for it to be exactly the same, right? You know, understand that there's always going to be haves and haves not, but it doesn't need to be the have lots and have nones, right? We need to be able to have every single person should have an opportunity to afford what, like you said, afford where they live, and education in particular, which, you know, again, is the big topic I'm really harping on right now. Is, you know, we shouldn't have failing schools while other schools can pay their teachers twice as much and provide all the different resources for the kids while the other schools can't. You know, in my own personal experience, I went from Mascoma, on the other side of the state was the school that I first went into, you know, on the lower economic scale of things. I didn't know better. I was a kid. And then, you know, when my parents divorced, my mom moved to Hanover. I had the opportunity to go to probably the third best funded school in the state.
That must have been like mind blown for you.
So, right? You know, I think back to like some of the examples of the difference. Again, I didn't know at the time. I'm just a kid. And, you know, if you've only experienced one thing, you don't realize what the other side sees. But I remember my classroom, we had one like MS-DOS computer, or maybe it was like an early Microsoft. I get to Hanover, every classroom had 3 or 4 the colorful Apple computers. They had a computer lab filled with the Apple products. They had a cart with the iBooks that they would bring to the classroom when every student needed it. Every student basically had 1.5 laptops, our computers. Like, it was a crazy number. Meanwhile, where it came from only had one computer in the classroom, or that could play Oregon Trail, and that's and if you were, you know, doing a project on it or something, you saved it to a floppy disk, and then you brought it home or went to another one. And then Hanover, we had, at the time, it was exciting, we had cloud saves, right? So if I was starting my work in my classroom and then went to the computer lab, I could just keep going.
That's incredible.
At the time, early 2000s, it just didn't exist. And then like I remember, you know, changing schools and being behind. You know, I was embarrassed at the time because I was very behind at reading level and didn't realize it. I just thought I read the same as everyone else. I'd never even thought of the idea of reading for fun. Never heard of it. The concept was so foreign to me. And I go to Hanover, and all the kids are talking about Harry Potter and how they've reread the book like 6 times. I'm like, I never even heard of Harry Potter until I moved schools. And there were words that, like, you know, everyone gets assigned, you know, the books that we're reading for class, and there were words that I had never even knew existed, like bureau, or I'm trying to remember. I'm going back in time in my mind. I remember particularly bureau and blouse were 2 words that were just I've never heard them in my life, or phrases from some of my peers, you know, having tutors or au pairs. Like, I didn't know what that meant. These are foreign words to me from where I came from. So when I transferred in 4th grade, and so experiencing that, and as an adult being able to reflect on that level of disparity should not exist. Yeah. And I don't want to. It's hard because you do ask some people to lose some of those resources, right? Ultimately, if we were to have a better funded state system, Hanover might lose some of those top end resources, but they're also the ones that are most likely voting for us to be this way, and they recognize themselves and are able to reflect the voters of these towns that are more successful. They're like, yeah, we have a lot. We should give some to others.
I think that if we took our top and we made this like, this is the bar,
mm-hmm.
and we brought everybody else up, I think we'd have an unbelievable state. Now, like I said, I grew up in Connecticut. I went to a trade school,
mm-hmm.
and it was a state-run school. So I believe the state of Connecticut, don't quote me on this, but I believe it has 13 state-run trade schools. And I didn't have to worry about, like, my school sucks compared to somebody else, or
mm-hmm.
vice versa. Everybody had the same.
Yeah.
Because the state was the top. So, but here in New Hampshire, we don't have that because the state doesn't want to fund education. We've already had 4 Supreme Court rulings here in New Hampshire. They still won't fund it. There's no repercussions. The only repercussions is some of the kids in this state are not as well educated as the others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awful.
Yeah.
Because those kids didn't get a choice. That's where they live. That's where they were told that they had to go to school. And maybe somebody's watching this saying, well, that's the whole point of EFAs. Could you imagine if they used that $51 million that they used last year for EFAs, and they put it into making all the public schools like good?
Yeah. So in New Hampshire, I think there's like 95 school districts. If you were to divide that, that's $500,000 for every school district.
That's a lot.
And then you could cut out probably the top ones because they don't need $500,000. So these bottom school districts could see $1 million plus.
Sure.
In new, capabilities. And even if, like, you're thinking about it, yes, we might be lowering the top end and what they receive. I think the impact of their overall success would extremely dwarf the growth we would see from the bottom, because there's probably a threshold point where every dollar you throw into one of these top schools isn't have big of a return on investment. While if you're investing more at these schools that are struggling today, they're going to see that jump in results, in grade scores, and retentions. Like, every single result will be so significant compared to any perceived negative impact you would see at these other schools.
I agree. And even from like a parent's point of view, if you're voting Republican, you're basically voting for your kids to grow up and leave the state because there's nothing here for them, right? So there's a lot of NIMBYism here in the state. like I said about the Burger King, people didn't even want a Burger King. That Burger King employs teenagers in this city
Yeah.
or town. And we need more of that. Like, my kids want to grow up here and be here. They want to have a family here. They don't want the idea of, oh, I have to move somewhere else to get the better education, to be able to afford a house, to be able to do XYZ. We're so lucky and fortunate to live in such a beautiful state. Yet the majority of the people that vote in this state are voting for their kids or other kids, other people's kids to leave.
Yeah.
And then there's no workforce, or a very limited one. As we age, we need the younger generation. And it's such, I don't even know even if it's changed, say this year, and we went full on supermajority Democrat, right? Which I'm not necessarily for. I believe in having, a well-rounded community. But even if we did that, it's probably going to take a generation or two to make up for what everybody's been voting for in the last several decades. This is not an overnight fix. And those people, I say those people, but people that see themselves as conservative, that go and vote down ticket are, they're not helping themselves.
Yeah.
This isn't, again, I don't want to shame people. I want people to have an off ramp. I want people to say, I made a mistake. I didn't know XYZ, and I want to make this better.
Yeah.
I want to live in a state that does better. And I think giving people off ramps is important. There's a guy down the road that's still flying a Trump sign. Matter of fact, he took it down and put it back up 3 months ago. I'll never change his mind. And I know that there's a segment of people that don't want to hear it, that, they think of myself as a weak bitch because I'm a progressive or whatever that case is. I know it's an extreme thing, but I have read these sentiments. They're real.
Yeah.
And I understand there's going to be 20 to 30% of people that no matter if I went and knocked on their door, begging and gave them all the information that they need, it's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
But we are fortunate enough to have a huge amount of independence undeclared. And I think those people are willing to listen.
Yep.
How we reach them is going to be the hard part. I think one thing that kind of made me sad a little bit was, I'm on the county executive council like you, and there's not enough people that want to do this. That don't want to do the messaging, right? And I'm not trying to criticize anybody. I understand people have lives, people have work. There's a lot that goes into this. We need to define our messaging, but more than that, we need to have the channels of messaging. Those have been taken away. If you could go outside and start wanting to talk to everybody, but then you realize really quick that you can't, because nobody's opening up their door. Nobody's taking the phone calls. I can't even tell you how many times somebody's been like, hey, Adam, you want to come in and phone bank? No, I don't. Right? Like, if you want a phone bank, congratulations. I think that's wonderful. I think it's powerful if you can connect with people. But most people will not answer the phone. If they don't know your number, if you're not stored in their contacts, they're not picking up. You can leave a message. Maybe 1% will call you back. Doubt it, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, we got to find other ways.
Yep.
Signs in people's yards aren't going to change, anybody's mind. Hanging a flag off your house isn't going to change your mind. Having a real conversation and having real ideas come out. So many Democrats, I need them to take down the rhetoric of imposing taxes and stuff like that. We can do better. We can find other revenue sources to make our taxes better. I think taxes and education are the number one issues in New Hampshire. Aside from politics, though.
Okay.
What do you do? What do you do for fun here in New Hampshire?
What do I do for fun? A lot of my, time is spent working out. There's a lot of gym time. In New Hampshire itself, me and my wife, we like to, we'll go skiing and snowboarding. we love to go down to like Portsmouth and Dover and enjoy the time out there. We take our dog hiking. We haven't done that as much in the last year, but we do like to do that. That's some of the exciting things. The fairs, love fair season. Really, always excited.
What's the best fair in your opinion?
Oh, Deerfield.
Really?
Oh yeah.
My daughter goes there all the time. Well, actually, I think this was her last year. She's a senior now.
Okay.
And so she's in the vet program, so she always goes, and they have a table.
Yeah.
And, you know, dog grooming and all that. So I hear nothing but good things from Deerfield.
Oh, I love the Deerfield Fair.
But Rochester has a school bus derby.
So we go to that. So, so we coming from the cosmopolitan life of New York City, and we both grew up in New Hampshire, but we're like, we don't need to go see buses crash into each other. Like we said, fine, we'll do it. We're here. We go like every year now. I love it. Dude, there's nothing more primal, just like feeling of the buses just lining up and just going into each other. Just screaming at the top of my lungs, cheering for them. When the little bus comes in, we're like, let's go. It's so much fun.
When we first got here, my brother came over and he was like, I want to take the kids to the school bus derby.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way you did. I was like, I don't know if they need to have that. I don't know if they need to be a part of that. They came home and they were like beside themselves. They were just like, this was so cool.
Yeah.
And those are interesting things in New Hampshire. I love hiking when my knees, are allowing me to do that. This place is gorgeous, whether it's the foliage in the fall and stuff like that. But we do suffer from not a lot of like nightlife. In the state, we're a little bit older, so most things are closed at 6, 7 o'clock. Maybe you'd be lucky and have a market basket open until 9.
Yeah.
But I really like the availability of nature in this state.
Yep.
Somebody that has been surrounded by city life and light pollution.
Mm-hmm.
I agreed when you first said about the stars.
Yeah.
I love a nice dark night where I can go out on the back porch and just take a look and see it all. There is something very primal of connecting with nature. And here we have so much water. You can go fishing. I know some people hunt. Like there's just so much goodness here. Do you think it'll make you live longer?
Will I live?
Well, just being surrounded by nature.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the statistics do say that, right? It all depends on where you are, though, because I actually just learned this about my town in particular, but I know it's not the only town that has this problem. But the ghosts of manufacturing past poisoned our water supplies all across the state, and now we're kind of suffering from that. So we'll see what the long-term effects of that are. I've recently, I won't say I'm obsessed with it, but I think about it a lot. I'm a lot more conscious of it. And as kooky as RFK is, there are pieces of things that he talks about that even before he became kind of the person that symbolically did this, just talk about health, what we've allowed companies to put in our food for decades, like, from without really doing any real research on them. And I don't want to like turn this into a conspiracy theory podcast about that, but I've tried to start cutting out food dyes from my diet, and trying to look at non-preservative food, so going straight to a baker versus buying bread from the bread aisle when you can, or buying organic meat versus not, because what are we don't know long-term effects of things like that. It's
well, absolutely. We put so much preservatives in our body because it's all about how much shelf life does this product have, how can I get it to extend for 30 days, 60 days, or even more. I actually agree with you on that. And I really don't want to give RFK Jr. any kind of kudos. Yeah. But in that particular, I don't know if he's actually made any headway on that. He's been spending so much time getting our vaccines taken away.
One of the Reds got banned, and that's it. I think that's like the most he's done. And pointed out some pieces of they just flip the food pyramid, which is not the right answer either.
No.
But it's good to point out that the old food pyramid really had us too invested in carbs.
Well, not only that, but the whole dairy and cheese thing, I know it's together, but those were spots that were paid for by industry.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily healthy for us.
Yeah. Cholesterol is still a risk.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was one thing I've done getting older now is really stop eating the fast food. I mean, not only is it way too expensive, but I bought a nice apron. I get in the kitchen. I'm cooking.
I'm the cook in my house too.
Everything I try to cook from scratch.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I was showing my oldest son. I had an IHOP pancake recipe that I got from the internet, and we made it from scratch. And it tastes just like IHOP.
That's great.
It's those kind of things that I look for the win. Listen, I love cooking. As a dude in the kitchen, I get it done.
Yeah.
And everybody is better off. Not only are we managing our weight better, I get my blood taken every 6 months, so I get to see like where I'm at.
The results, yeah.
And I'm in pretty good shape, to be honest. Like, if anything's gonna take me out, it's a heart attack. But I don't think it's gonna be like cholesterol or anything like that because we do cook everything from home. We have a little thing as a family, we eat out twice a month. And sometimes it's Buffalo Wild Wings being delivered, and sometimes that's Chinese food or something like that, which, by the way, New Hampshire has the worst Chinese food. I will die on that hill. Being from Connecticut, going to Mass all the time, having New York next to you.
I lived in Flushing. Trust me, I completely understand.
What is going on with our Chinese? Like, we are so close to Massachusetts.
So you say, I'm not gonna be as harsh of a critic about food in general. I talked about New York there's no place you could find better food, higher quality food, and diversity of food than New York City.
True.
We just had me and my wife. We had the conversation. We just have to come to terms that accessibility is not here, but it's different. So like Chinese food, for example, up here it's more fast food style Chinese food, or even the pizza's a big difference up here from it stylistically and taste and all that. It's more. It's not fast food because it's not fast, but but there's still moments where it's like, I know it's not as good and it's so bad for me, but I just want to absolutely crush one right now.
Oh no.
It's like, and it's very like if you were in those moments where, like, if you were to put a New York pizza versus, the New Hampshire House of Pizza style, right? And if I'm in that mood that I just want to crush that style of pizza, that's what I want. I could cast aside the New York because that's not what I'm in the mood for. I just want to crush a pizza, drink some soda, and play some Halo, right? Like, I want to be.
We can end this right now. I want to be 13. And get that done.
I want to be 13 again. Okay, that's a lot. I don't know, that's the memories when you're like, oh man, me and my brothers.
No, I fully agree with you. And I will say this just to put it in here, but Albuquerque has a pizza place, Chicago style pizza. The guy moved from Chicago and opened up 2 places in Albuquerque. Maybe he has more now. It's been 15 years, but Cloud9 Pizza changed my complete view on pizza. I love it. I could be a Ninja Turtle. Literally, I eat that much pizza.
I'm glad that you don't hate on Chicago pizza, because I've talked to, especially being in New York, people just hating on, and my wife too. She does not like Chicago pizza. Now, to be fair, she doesn't like cheese either. So it's the wrong choice to have Chicago pizza. But that's another thing that I
used to go to this place, and he had a special pizza called Reuben Pizza. And he would give you a tub of Thousand Island, so you could just take your pizza and just dip it in there. Yeah. And at that point, they just need to wheel you out and put you in your car and send you on your way.
Yeah.
I find that's one of the hardest things about New Hampshire. The seasonings here are very, they don't use them. I wish we had better food. But again, we have that balance of, we have beautiful nature. We're in a really good spot. You could go to other states for that. It just seems to be like the standard. Like,
you're being a little harsh on New Hampshire food, but
am I?
There are spots.
What is the go-to?
What is the go-to?
Yeah, if you're in the mood, like, where are you going to eat and what is it?
So as far as restaurants go,
Yeah.
I was obsessed for a while with Anatolia in Somersworth.
What kind of food is that?
Turkish,
Oh,
Mediterranean, incredible.
really?
Yes.
One of my favorite foods is you say Nepalese, right?
Like
From
from
Nepal.
Nepal, yeah.
Yeah. Unreal.
I
But
think there's a Nepalese place in Portsmouth. I think me and my wife went there. That was very good.
they have one out in Plastow as well
Yeah.
that I seen recently just pop up. So, I want to go to some of the barbecue places. Like, I've heard Mr. Sippy in Rochester is
I've
unbelievable.
heard some good things there. And 603, I keep seeing shows up on Instagram. Foodies are going crazy for that one too.
Yeah, New Hampshire just doesn't have like it doesn't have such a huge like foodie market.
I think
guess
it'll
you
get
could say.
I feel like it's growing.
You think so? Like,
Just
I see more food trucks.
Just food. Yeah, well, they start as food trucks, and then they eventually find a place. I have, in just my brief period living down here on the seacoast, just for maybe 5 years now, I feel like there's like momentum towards it. And it goes back to like what you've said about the location. And I tell all my friends, I tell people that I talk to, it's like, I live in Farmington, and it makes no sense to me the challenges it has as a town, because it is in literally the best location that I could think of. It's 30 minutes from Lake Winnipesaukee. It's 30 minutes from the ocean. Yep. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours to Boston, an hour and 15 to Portland, an hour to Manchester. You can go skiing in an hour. You can, I
feel the same way.
It's so mind-boggling to me that how a place could be perfect location and have the challenges it has. And again, I'm going to go back to like a little bit, it doesn't have like, again, that economic engine to take care of itself, but
I think Farmington's beautiful. I just think it's underserved.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And
I think long-term, and we're seeing it, right? That, we joked about it before, don't mass up New Hampshire. Everything's moving north because of the affordability and the challenges with affordability, which unfortunately, very much so puts pressure on the people that live there today.
Yeah.
As property values go up, and you lose that generation staying. Their parents live there, but now I can't buy the house next door. But the development is growing north, and I think it's inevitable where, talking about better restaurants, talking about, more people moving to town, and hopefully with it, responsible development that creates value and helps build the communities up.
Oh, we're feeling it right now. I basically live directly in the middle of Epping, Rochester, and Dover.
Yeah.
And it's kind of all like moving towards my town.
Yeah.
And yours isn't that far away either. So,
No.
It's only a matter of time. But I can feel a lot of people moving in from the city. But now my city or my town is not like as financially welcoming, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Even with the new condos that they put in, those are $500,000 condos.
Yeah.
Nobody's buying a $600,000 condo. That would be absurd.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even have a yard to play in. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But I mean, somebody's buying them,
Yeah. I mean, so, thinking about development and providing housing or trying to build up housing. I mean, you have to build it at all levels, right? You need to build from entry point to luxury, because even if you just put in those 500,000 condos, you're going to find families that can afford it, that might have been holding onto a house because that's all they had, move up into that. And then now you have another piece of property available to someone. So you always want to, I think, develop at every level. Obviously, the most needed right now is the more affordable entry point housing. I think we need to focus there and help.
I think what's stopping that though is there's no money to be made on making affordable housing. And that's where the state can come in and try to make there be an incentive to make affordable housing. We thought we were getting affordable housing in the center of our town, but it turned out the builders didn't want to make very little money. They wanted to make all the money And then it changed everything. So now
Yeah.
we have these really high luxury condos that again doesn't help the younger generation
Yeah.
be in workforce housing. Living with your parents until you're 40 is not an answer.
No.
That is not how you make a prosperous society. And I think that's, not good.
Yeah, there's different incentives that we can try to create to encourage, responsible development, right? Like, and even at the town level, you might not even need a state, allow for zoning of housing plots to be smaller. And so someone who might have, let's say, an acre of land, they could be like, well, I could split it, sell half of it, and then someone could build their own house on it. And, it's up to them to make it, affordable for themselves, but you have that opportunity, hopefully. And then, where the state can support, is provide, backing to, a backing for loans, make it easier for people to maybe borrow money, maybe have incentive for first-time home buyers, different ways to support them, because then that make sure that they're the ones that are purchasing and building the houses. And then, like I shared before, an idea of taxing non-residents if they own it. So you got to disincentivize, people buying it as a income stream versus a actual home.
Yeah, single family homes as investments just don't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I think it did maybe a few decades ago when like we had inventory,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like that's been an ongoing issue regardless in the state.
There's some responsible ways of being a provider of a single file home as a landlord, because you're assuming all the risk of the value of that home, right? There's value in just being a renter, right? You could be more transient. You don't have to commit to one location. So renting is still important to have, even the full home.
Absolutely.
So then, a family can live there, even if it's a temporary situation, or they're not sure they want to be long-term, or
apartments can be a good launching pad into something else. So I fully support that.
But it's the, the sharks who use it purely.
They see this for sale signs. They're like, great, new inspection. I'll pay cash and I'll give you $25,000.
When they only view it as a investment to add to their portfolio of dozens to hundreds of properties with no human connection to the people of the community, I think that's where we lose it. And it just, you hear about these huge investment groups that they just have so much buying power that they can just take control of everything.
Well, our own governor sits on the board of BlackRock.
Yes.
And that's a huge issue.
Yeah.
I don't know why people swung that way. I mean, I do. That was because Trump was on top of the ticket.
Yeah.
If Trump wasn't on the top of the ticket for 24, I think that the state probably would have went a little bit more blue. I don't believe that it wouldn't have been red. I just think that it would be less red.
Probably.
And I think that will be the difference in 26 and 28. I think that will change the state dramatically. You're the vice chair of your town.
Yes.
I am as well for here. And it's such an interesting position because we get to influence like people that are running for office and like what our town Democrats have access to, what we're doing in our community. It's interesting because the influence you get, and then we're both on the county executive council as well. So not only do we get the town perspective, but we get the county perspective as well. I think that I feel good about this year in general. I think we have really good candidates. How are you guys feeling in Farmington? Have you guys found an easy time finding quality candidates?
So that's something we have not actually really accomplished so far.
Is that from...
We're very small. Like when I say a small group, I mean, there's probably like 6 to 7 to 8 of us that are really in communication to each other. It's something that I want to work towards. Stan, who's been the chair, I think, for a while now.
Stan's great.
He's incredible.
I love Stan. His energy for You guys live in a pretty red part.
Very much so, yes.
And it's an uphill battle.
Yep.
Manny Krasner, another
Manny's
example.
incredible.
Unbelievably passionate.
Yep.
Wants to see the state prosper and all of that. Yeah. So
like we're like the three amigos there, right? That trying to keep this together, and we're kind of for a long time was it. With several others, we had a few good outings where, we filled a couple tables at the local restaurant, but not super engaged. That's part of my goal with both this messaging outlet, but also being more active in our community forums. And actually, this week I texted Stan because as a result of all the conversation that's going on, I'm seeing more positive messaging from our perspective, which I would not have thought of something that we would see in our forums just a year ago. And so I think there's an opportunity now that I could basically say, hey, I'm Taylor Crawford. I am the vice chair of the Democrats. I invite you to come out, whether you are a Democrat, undecided, or Republican even, to just listen to the message that we have. And again, look at who's been representing you for so long. Is that truly working out for you? Just basically ask the question, like, be as frank as possible and say, we have 2 Republicans right now, one a free stater. Is the policy that they're voting for actually supporting you? Are you getting what you wanted when you voted last November? If that's the case, ignore my message, continue on with your life. Things are somehow happening well for you. I'm happy for that. But for the most part, I'm sure most of you in this town would agree that they are not getting what was basically promised to them. I wasn't really there for the election. Like, I was in town, but I was not as involved. So I don't even know what their election efforts were. I'll tell you, they didn't show up to the deliberative session for the school board. So if they're making decisions at a state level for our education, they don't care enough to show up to our town's discussion about our education.
It's the same here. I think we struggle to get people to attend. We also really struggle on getting people to come out for like the Democrat committee. And I don't know if the other side feels the same. I don't know how to get people to want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
It's hard because people are tired after work. They're just busy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a struggle that we're going to have for a while.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing in Farmington to try to bring people in? Do you have any?
So we have our social media presence and digital, the website, but we're trying to be, from the people that I talk with, be more engaged with the community. I think that's, again, just trying to connect with people, see people. In my opinion, if we see people beyond the party that they're registered with, it makes it a lot easier to have that conversation. Like if we were to do a door-to-door campaign, or even if you're just sitting at at a bar or having a slice of pizza with someone, and you were to start talking about, like, man, property taxes are so high, and how is it for you? What's taking place?
This is Inks, by the way. He also likes to be part of the podcast a little bit.
You got opinions, I know it.
Yeah.
They're not feeding you enough. I'll have a talk to the congressman.
Right.
If you were to talk about what the day-to-day issues for just about everyone, especially in our towns, we're all going through the same challenges. And if you were to go through all the same conversations that, for the most part that we're having, without even mentioning a party, without mentioning candidates, and even mentioning, some policy, right? Like if I was to talk about with a conservative in our town about open enrollment, for example, and how that's going to take money that you paid, not just the tax money of the student that leaves, because the average tax payment in Farmington is between $5,000 to $6,000 per property.
Yep.
The open enrollment promises about $20,000. So that family is promised, is not only sending their $5,000 to $6,000, but they're sending their neighbors $5,000 to $6,000 and another neighbor's $5,000 to $6,000. Right? It's basically a theft from the property tax level. And if we were to have that conversation, and be like, man, I totally agree. Like human to human, we're gonna agree on these positions and the challenges that we have, and that we both go through every day. And it's when you can make that connection, I think it's at that point you say, listen, I know there's some differences in our ideological ways, but I'm a Democrat. I see that we have Republicans who have been voting this way forever. And at the state and town level, they are burdening us with what the results of today. So that is the change we need to make. Democrats will hate me for saying this, but I would maybe in that moment say, I don't care who you vote for. Like, I know you're probably not going to be swayed at the national level.
Sure.
You're probably going to vote for the senator you want to vote for. You're going to vote for the governor. You're going to, maybe not the governor, but the presidential candidate. You're going to vote that way because that's how you feel about those national policies and how they impact you and the country. But locally, that I think we need to think beyond just which side you're on. And I'm asking you, based on the conversation we just had, to consider the Democrat this time, because we've done the Republican for so long and it is not working, and it's just going the wrong direction further and further.
I think that's a reasonable take. One thing that maybe this is a hot take, I don't really know, but here in New Hampshire, we really like doing the comparison. Like, during election time, you get the little mail flyers and they say, hey, your congressman or woman is doing XYZ. They know that.
Yeah.
They voted for that.
Yeah.
For good reason. And I personally think that we should stop doing that. Like, it's
Stop
okay.
Mailers.
Not the mailers. The do you know what your rep is doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they do know. They sent them there for that reason. And
I'm gonna disagree. I think they don't know. I think that they've done such a good job when they're campaigning to keep it vague about what they're gonna do. They say the big talking points, like, oh yeah, we see that your taxes are so expensive. We want to fix that. We don't want to advance these LGBT issues. We don't want to, let immigrants in our state. They make all these promises and they deliver on them, but not really. not to the betterment of the local folks. And I think it, because they don't have the opportunities. I'm fortunate enough that I, make enough money that I can have free time, and I can make, and I don't have children to take care of. I just have my dog and my cat. Like, I have free time to be more informed, so I could look into the depth of what they're doing. I think, again, they only get that surface level. And, unfortunately, with a lot of media today, is once you find yourself through the algorithm in one rabbit hole, that's what you're going to be pushed towards, and you're not going to see the other side. So they're going to do their darndest and say, oh, we could have done more if we didn't get pushback from the Democrats, which, you and I know is a complete farce, because they have control of every single chamber.
Oh, absolutely. It would be silly to think that the Democrats have any sway in this state.
But it's like that video that, I sent to you. Just direct them to Wikipedia and say, scroll and tell me what color you see. It's red for 140 plus years.
Yeah, Moses would split it.
Yeah. It's I think it's you know, just being able to communicate person to person and point out something that makes them question what they've been told. You know, and it can be done, I think, pretty easily over a slice of pizza, a beer, like or even just saying, hey, when you get home, send this link. Look at this link. I shared it on Facebook. You know, whatever you have to do.
I go back to 2024 a lot because it is the time that I ran. So I got to see like the actual machine at work. We as a state sent out a ton of flyers. I probably received 40 or 50 from both sides,
so many,
right? And when I say that, oh, they probably didn't know, that's probably the wrong way to say it. What I mean is, if people cared about what their rep was doing, 2024 would have been different because we told everybody what their reps were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I go back to Len because he's our Republican representative in my area.
Yep.
We told them all. We told them what he was doing, you know, and nobody cared because he's back doing what he does best.
Yeah.
At the state level. So I personally think as a person with a marketing background, you know, I got to see my anecdotal, you know, position. I feel like people need more than just, hey, do you know that your rep voted for this? Because the people that are voting for that, they don't care. There's enough people that do care, but it really depends on who's at the top of the ticket that's driving it, right?
It does. That's a big influence. Yeah.
We never saw a turnout like we did in 24. I hold the signs up at the middle school all the time, you know, and I get to see. I show up early and I'll stay there all day sometimes, and I get to see who shows up. It's everybody.
Yeah.
And most of those people are celebrating a lot of these bad policies, and that's why I'm taking back a little bit, because I think that in some cases, I think it's okay to tell people this is what people are doing. But I think as a committee, as a group, as a party, we spend far too much time trying to assign letter grades to candidates.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly, if they're not Democrats, we're going to give them an F.
Yeah.
Those people don't care. The people that keep electing those people don't care what their letter grade is. They don't care that they voted against, you know, whatever it is that's harmful to our community.
Yeah, I think probably what's missing and we've seen it over the years is the connection of, you know, you could say like, oh, did you hear they signed the bill to lower the business enterprise tax, you know, if that goes through, which we're making the assumption it is. They're like, all right, good, lower taxes, I don't care.
Right.
You can't just give them that piece of information and expect it's gotta hit the mark. You have to say, no, they cut that tax, so these huge companies are gonna save millions of dollars. Our local pizza joint, at the most, is gonna get maybe $500 back for the year. So they're not hiring anyone new. They're maybe getting one additional shift of work per month.
Yeah,
like at most. It's so those $1 million companies get that money, and guess what? Those $1 million companies still have millionaire CEOs. They're still laying people off.
They still have tons of lawyers to lobby and fight, and
and so that money's not being really used constructively, especially here in New Hampshire. But that $26 million that they saved could have gone towards, you know, making the roads better, or maybe helping our schools. I'm in the process of making another video, and I think the 26 million represents, it's like the entire or half the budget of like the state police or something like that. Like or their income. I can't remember the exact number, but you know, it impacts what we're able to provide from a state level, and we just kind of made it go away without really helping people locally. So I think the message, we need to make the connection to the message, right? Like, hey, your property taxes are high. They are high because this bill was voted on by your representative. Therefore, we need to make we need to fix that, or else you're going to continue seeing higher taxes, lower services, and worse outcomes.
I think getting people to understand that is obviously our tallest wall.
It's
to
very
get over,
hard. Yes.
Because we don't have access to those people, right?
Yep.
Again, in this town, we don't really have a community center. There's not a place where you can go and like rub shoulders with people and have these kind of conversations.
Yeah.
My nearest neighbor is 500 feet from my house. I see them a few times a year. We wave to each other, and that's usually the extent.
Yeah.
Maybe that's me being a bad neighbor, or that's just the isolation.
I barely talk to my neighbors. I totally understand it. And it's not that I don't like them or anything. It's just
we're a very isolated state in that regard.
I think society in general has moved that way because we've exchanged the downtown community and the church service and Elks clubs and different clubs for social media.
Right.
I have tons of friends. They all live hundreds of miles away across the country.
Same.
Or I have friends in Europe. Like, they're not my neighbors anymore. Whereas before, the community was local because you didn't have really a branch. You couldn't branch out beyond that.
Well, and it's really hard to make friends when you're older. So if you decide to move into a different location, the likelihood of you establishing your community is very small. I've lived here for 8 years. I have less than probably 4 or 5 local friends.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it requires a leaning into discomfort because meeting new people can be a challenge. Me and my buddy actually, not from local, he's from New Jersey, came up for New Year's. We went to the local bar for karaoke, just the two of us. And we only stayed for I sang the only song that got between us. And maybe we could have, if we could have convinced my wife and his girlfriend to come, maybe we would have stayed longer. But, there's, like you said, you have to really dig at it because it's
hard.
Yeah. There's, and we get set in our ways. And again, we work, we're working, we have other responsibilities that we're going towards. So what we're trying to accomplish requires this extra effort.
I've been pushing myself a little bit. I decided last year as I started going back out into the community and I've been feeling a little bit better for my veneers.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in line at Market Basket and I see somebody that might be approachable in front of me or even behind me, I'll just strike up a conversation.
Yeah.
There was a guy wearing an army hat, an army shirt. I would never have spoken to him otherwise. But I said, you know what? Let me go out of my comfort zone. I said, hey, man, I really like your hat.
Yeah.
And he looked at me weird, like I was approaching him. But then all of a sudden, all the walls came down. He's like, thank you.
Yeah,
and then we started talking. And I told him as he walked away, I was like, hey, man, I hope to see you again. And I've been doing it with my the transfer station here.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to talk up the workers a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe if they're watching, they'll notice that I've been a little bit more chatty. I'm trying to establish anchors in the community, not because I need something out of it, but because doesn't it feel good when
you want to be a part
connected?
of it. Yeah.
I moved here because I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And it feels weird to not, be out there and I'm isolated on my 2 acres of land and everybody else is too. That's really hard for this area of the country. I lived in the South for 12 and a half years between North Carolina and Georgia. And you couldn't go check your mail without a neighbor coming over and having a conversation.
Yeah.
I would come home, hit the mailbox, and somebody would be like, hey, Adam, what are you doing? And I would walk over and sit on their porch for 30 minutes and catch up.
Yeah.
Here, that's not the case. You will not find that here. At least I have not.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit more, reclusive.
And I think that's just the nature.
Yeah, it's just the nature of it. Yeah,
we live in the part of the country that really minds its business.
Yeah,
that's not socially just chatty and stuff. And I think that's okay. What I like about here though is that if you need help, somebody will help you.
Yeah,
whether it's a flat tire on the side of the road or something else. I do like that. I like that people will put their indifference aside and they will come in and they'll be a part of whatever you need. And I like that. We have good people here in New Hampshire. It's just hard to reach outside of those things. So, being part of my local council as well,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. I don't know how to bring more people into the committee, because it's hard to reach them, whether it's trying to build up a Facebook group, an email list,
Yeah.
inviting people into your Zoom conversation. I hope that will change in the future.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, my goal is to try to become more present, being active on the forums and sharing the content that I'm making, showing up to more town events, particularly, like the ones that are engaging the electorate in particular, whether it was the deliberative session or, planning candidate events, right? We have the school board candidate positions. So it's like, if there's an event taking place, go there, maybe not necessarily put myself as a supporter of any of the candidates, but say like, hey, you're active and part of this community. You might be interested in being a part of this. So it's work.
And you become a familiar face.
Yeah.
So when people see you multiple times, it's like, oh, wait, who is this person?
Yeah.
Why are they here?
It happened to me the other day. I was, visiting one of my customers on a sales call, and she goes, oh, by the way, the other night, me and, my boyfriend's like, man, this Taylor guy, I really agree with what he has to say. And she goes, Taylor Crawford? And he goes like, yeah, how'd you know? I was like, he's my rep.
See,
like,
that's the good stuff right there. Which...
so I'm like, I tell him like, oh, appreciate the kind support. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed the message I had there. But yeah, I mean, that it's
start
piece
somewhere.
by piece. And right now is the time to do it, because I think people are getting super engaged right now. I did not feel this much engagement, even though in my town, I'm talking very specific to my experience, there wasn't a huge engagement politically last year, even though we had a president. A ton of people voted, but they weren't outwardly like campaigning. There wasn't discussion on the forums. Like, it was, maybe that's New England, right? It was very insular. People got their information inside, walked to the polls, and voted. I think this year people are getting more engaged because I think they're getting these experiences. The cost of things did not go down as they were told it would. Right. Maybe eggs and bacon are a little cheaper, but you're paying $1,000 more in healthcare, so it doesn't.
Yeah, you save $1 on your eggs, but you got to fork over $1,000.
Yeah, right. Like,
healthcare.
I think that's another conversation piece that we could talk about forever, is the way that we evaluate overall costs and things, and how easy it is to manipulate that conversation. But I just find that people have been a lot more engaged this year. They're willing to speak out on the issue online, within our community, even knowing that for a long time, if they had shared that kind of opinion, they probably would have been dogpiled for having it. But now there's more people supporting our side of things. Whether they're Democrat or not, I don't know. I don't know their party affiliation or who they vote for, but I do know that they are recognizing that there is a problem that's affecting them every day, and they want an answer to it. And I think that we have that opportunity to try to bridge the gap.
I think most people in the past, they didn't feel the national elections as hard as they do now. There's so much coming down from the federal into all the states that you can't ignore it. You can't. Like, when you have to pay more at the end of the day, you leave the culture war and you enter the financial war.
Yes.
And the sooner people stop dividing themselves and stop seeing it from like a sports team thing,
Yes.
I think the faster we can come together and fix what's broken. I also want lower taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I also want smaller government. There's so many like points that I can probably connect to a conservative, right? A Republican, maybe not a MAGA
Yeah.
person with those kind of ideologies, but people that are truly conservatives, right? That used to talk about fiscal conservatives and all that. I can connect with them. But it's hard when you're only going after culture war, because culture war does not pay your bills.
Yes.
A trans person using the bathroom publicly will not pay your electric bill.
Yeah.
You can hate them, you can love them, you can do anything you want, but at the end of the day, you make X amount of money and it costs this much to live.
Yep.
So you can put your energy wherever you want, but hating somebody is not going to make us great. It's not going to help you. It's not going to make the next generation better off. There's so many things that we need to do locally so we can affect the national conversation.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's hard, but that's why I'm doing stuff like this. And it's so powerful when I see, people like yourself doing it too, because we're all pitching in at a certain level, and the communication and messaging part is critical. I keep, every time I say that, I picture Trump in the garbage truck and the outfit that he wore, and he looks so orange.
Yeah.
I know that's probably me having TDS. but those are the things that people remember, and people want to hear that they're just like you.
Yeah.
Now, anybody that thinks that a billionaire relates to them is off base wildly.
Yeah. I mean, he is without a doubt a tremendous salesperson at what he does. And he's not as much this time around. I will say that he's losing his touch with his connectivity, and I think that's maybe why people are starting to not connect with him as much. But it's like he went to the McDonald's, had the McDonald's outfit on. He just looks like a grandpa in there. He can be genuinely a pretty funny person at times. That makes it easy to connect to, especially people of that generation, and that people who are more in line with some of the policies, maybe not all of them, but at least can hear what he's saying and say like, this guy's just a guy. And meanwhile, the messaging on the other side had a tremendous focus on those social issues, like you said, which again are critical, and we really need to protect every single one of those. They don't. If you as a household are worried about the plant shutting down, keeping food on the table, keeping the roof over your head, you don't really care about DEI, or you don't care about equal rights for LGBT, because you need to take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
And I'm of the opinion that if we were to get it right economically, that if you were to talk to those same people that voted Trump, not all of them, like, I actually support, I put them in two categories. There's a Trump voter and Trump supporter.
Sure.
Trump supporter, you'll never change, but a Trump voter, you can. If you were to talk to them after things get fixed, this is an ideal world where the economy's put back in place.
Right.
We have growth again. People are able to take care of themselves. If you were to knock on the door and say, how are you today? How are things? Hey, did you know that, people in this, different community of yours, right? Whether it's a person of color or LGBT, they're hurting because XYZ. They'd be like, well, I'd be willing to help them more. Or environmental issues, right? They'd be more willing to start talking about, our drinking water should be clean. Yeah, I'm taken care of. I think we can open up more eyes once those basic necessities for their household are taken care of first. And I think that's why another reason why Trump was so successful was because he focused it pretty hard on those. He made that front and center across the board, especially in 2016, when he went to, the states that ultimately won it for him, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, while Hillary spent most of her time in blue states and the set, like she missed it was a complete miss.
Right.
Because those states, their huge focus was, we're losing manufacturing, we're losing jobs. And just looking for an answer there, and he had an answer. It was not the right answer, but he had an answer, and it was not being addressed the same from the Democrats.
It's amazing the amount of regret that is being posted online, and maybe it's just bots, maybe it's AI, I don't know, but I think a lot of people have been hurt by their last vote.
Yeah.
And people that also voted blue and they didn't want any of this, but they're getting it too. I think that this is going to be a defining moment in history where people can actually see policy in action. They went so hard in such a short amount of time. Normally, the Republicans can, over 4 or 8 years, depending, like George Bush for 8, they can usually hide their incompetence and their hate for the middle class and lower. But I think they went so hard, so fast that the swing will be intense.
Yeah.
That does not mean that anybody should stay at home and not vote.
No.
Like, if you're not voting this year, I don't know what to tell you at this point.
Yeah.
But we should see just a huge turnout. I hope that people will see this. I hope that people in our communities and communities like ours will come out and be a part of the machine as well, right? Being on a Zoom call with 6, 7, 8 people is disheartening, right? Because we could have done that really in my living room.
Yeah.
Yeah. That doesn't help change towns. That doesn't help change policy. That we need people to be involved. Even if you're tired, even if you've worked all day, the littlest thing that you could do makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Tell your neighbors about good policy.
Yep.
Get involved, be a part of the Facebook group, attend the Zoom. I understand talking about politics and listening to candidates. Maybe it's not the most like glorious thing you can do on your Wednesday night or whatever night it is. But if we're going to fix this, it has to start somewhere.
Yeah. And the effort, it's a pyramid, right? You have the people who are going to be the most involved, where they make it a big part of their life, right? What we're doing right now, we're taking time out of our weekend to put content together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it reaches someone who might be medium engaged. Again, my example of my customer's boyfriend, he was the one reading through the things and interested in following up on it. And then he spread it to her by saying like, hey, I agree with this guy. So from the effort that a small group does expands its way downwards. I mean, and you can slowly build up, the more you can build up at the top, the more you can, really broaden out at the bottom. But it has to, starts at a point, are we the point? Maybe we're a little bit of it. And that's, the task that we've thrown on our shoulders to try to at least start something.
We have so much work ahead of us. We're 6 months out from our primary. We need to get more people in our community involved. We have canvassing to do. We have marketing to do. We have candidate support. Like, there's so many things. In your town, what could somebody that's not involved, where could they make like the largest impact in Farmington, do you think?
Yeah. Who's not involved currently?
Yeah. Like, I could tell you why you're thinking if you need a second. I think if you are somebody that has a link to the Zoom, give it to somebody else that might have just a little bit of a desire and bring them along.
Yep.
Right. I think they do that for church as well. If
you
know somebody that does go to church, you bring a friend, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean, it's politics.
Yeah. I think I will say there's a lot of work that I have to do to make it more accessible. I think, just advertising that we exist. I think that's something that we can first accomplish in Farmington.
Yeah.
And just like exactly like he said, just extend the invitation out there, and just let people know that you don't have, when I've talked to Stan in the past, I've told him, I said, I know there are more Democrats in this town than just the couple of us, but they've always been kind of quiet about it, especially given today's climate. I think that door is opening this year for people to be like, hey, I want to stand up and at least do a little bit. There's, we've seen, I would have never imagined the kinds of events that are taking place in the last year, from the No Kings to Ice Out. Like, I never in my life would have imagined that would have come to a point where that exists.
Yep.
But seeing how big it is, in particular, at some of the events here in New Hampshire, and it's like almost every weekend, some of these events are taking place and being put together, and there's new people showing up to them, not the same, super engaged Democrats over and over. It's new people showing up to this and saying, I couldn't let it continue. I need to speak up.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people looking for avenues. I created a Barrington Democrats group.
Yeah.
Does Stratford does Farmington have one?
Yeah, we have one on Facebook, Farmington Democrats page, that people can follow along, and then we have the Farmington Democrats website as well.
Anybody watching locally, your town, my town, any town here, we need people to canvass this summer, going door to door and telling people about our candidates. We need people, maybe phone banking. We need people to do so many things.
Yeah.
To just be a part of it, to volunteer, to be in their community as much as they can. There's so much at stake. You're posting your content on Facebook, Instagram?
Yes.
YouTube?
Not YouTube. No, I don't have. I
That's
do have a YouTube, but I haven't been posting.
It's quite a commitment. If they wanted to know, if they wanted to connect with you or the Farmington Dems, like, what's the best way that they can do?
I mean, they could try to find me on Facebook. I don't keep my page private or anything. I keep it open. It's just Taylor Crawford.
Okay.
Usually that's pretty easy to find it. If you're looking for the Instagram page, it's Taylor Crawford NH at Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah.
Pretty easy to find you.
I was excited that was available to me. I'm not allowed Taylor Crawford's in New Hampshire.
No, you got lucky by putting NH at the end.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think we have covered so much on this. I'll give you the last word. Is there anything else that you want to tell anybody, or find you, or promote, or anything?
Just be engaged. I think we need to look at the world around us, especially here in New Hampshire. It's easy to feel like you can't influence anything in such a big place, a big world, but especially in small towns like Farmington and in a smaller state like New Hampshire, it just takes a couple people to turn momentum to really make a real impact. Don't give up on it simply because that's just the way things are. We are seeing a momentum change right now. And it's up to us to try to collect it, put that energy to good use, and really change the direction that we're in. And maybe we won't solve all the world's problems in 1 year, because it does take time. But don't be discouraged, I think, is the big thing. And that's something that it was unfortunate when I first started attending Democrat meetings, and that's not just in New Hampshire, it was in New York too. A lot of discouragement, a lot of I think there was people were not able to connect to the other side, and I'll frankly say they were nasty in some ways about their own neighbors because they voted the other direction, not fully understanding maybe why or how and what made them come to that conclusion. At the end of the day, we're all just people, especially at this level. We're just people,
They're trying to survive.
There are those that aren't real people, who don't live in the same reality as us. But they're the ones that are taking everything away from us. Take it back.
I appreciate your insight. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah.
I hope that we have a good year, and I hope we also have more conversations in the near future too.
I am totally into it.
Thank you so much for your time and having this talk with me. I appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
Go, Adam.
All right.
Thank you.